We have seen a lot about Lori Vallow over the years, but for the first time, the so-called Doomsday Mom sat down for an interview. She did it with NBC's Dateline. She's doing life without parole for, among other crimes, the terrible murders of her 2 children in Idaho.
And now she's at the Estrella jail in Phoenix, awaiting a conspiracy to commit murder trial. 12 News journalist Erica Stapleton is here with more on that jailhouse interview. Erica?
Yeah, Tram Troy, this is the first TV interview with Lori Vallow behind bars. It is extensive and often combative. But before we get to that, let's give you some background. Back in 2023, Lori Vallow was sentenced to life in prison in Idaho for killing her children, Tylee and JJ, who used to live here in the Valley. In Arizona, she's facing 2 conspiracy to commit murder charges, one out of Chandler in the death of her former husband, the other a shooting attempt in Gilbert at her niece's ex-husband, who ultimately wasn't injured. The trial in that Chandler case is set to start later this month, and it's been a long time coming. Lori Vallow has been locked up in the Estrella jail here in Maricopa County since late 2023 after her conviction in Idaho. Her husband, Chad Daybell, was also convicted in the Idaho case and sentenced to death. She will be representing herself here in Arizona at her upcoming trial. Here's part of that exclusive interview with Keith Morrison.
Chad was convicted and he's on death row now.
I understand that, yeah.
But
They have some fascinating stories.
How could you possibly think that Chad would be exonerated after what happened?
The same way I will be exonerated. We will both be exonerated in the future.
Because?
I have seen things in the future that Jesus showed me when I was in heaven. And we were not in jail. And we were not in prison. And they were still in the future from now.
So let's take a legal deep dive. Defense attorney Hector Diaz joins us once again. Hector, obviously you saw that. How could they both be exonerated?
You know, I think what she's referring to is this whole Idaho matter, right? She was convicted, life without parole. And I think what she was referring to is, you know, hey, we're going to be exonerated. And you know, maybe to the extent she's talking about the Arizona convictions, I mean, she hasn't gone to trial, and she's optimistic and has agreed to the interview with Keith Morrison. Yeah. So.
Which I was going to say, if she was your client, would you ever allow her to do a sit-down jailhouse interview?
No, I would run for my office to stop it. To stop it, absolutely. Yeah. And if she wanted to proceed with it, if I was her attorney, I mean, we're talking potentially motions to withdraw as her counsel at that point.
Well, and maybe because she has, you know, life in prison, that she doesn't care at this point.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I'll say hearing some of that interview, to me, it's reminiscent of her sentencing in Idaho back in 2023. That was really the first time we ever heard her speak out because she did not represent herself in Idaho. She didn't really say much after she had been first arrested in this case. And during that sentencing, she said, you know, I heard in a dream, my kids are fine, it'll be okay. And the judge, when he ultimately gave her that life sentence in Idaho, he said, it's clear you are deep down in a religious delusion here. And it seems like that it's hard to tell if, you know, it's a bit of an act from her or if that's truly what she believes and that's how she got to this point here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Jodi Arias did this. You know,
yes, with Troy, in fact, yeah.
I went back to watch the Jodi Arias interview that they did. And this one takes the cake. I mean, the snippets that I've seen thus far, you know, and something that could be happening behind the scenes here, right? She has nothing to lose. She is just like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna get my story out. I'm gonna talk. And, you know, there might be other inmates, we call, you know, the jailhouse lawyers that are in there telling her, you know, you've got a platform, tell your story, tell it. Judge isn't gonna listen to it. Jury isn't gonna listen to it, but maybe the public might.
Okay.
So.
Well, on Tuesday, I had a chance to talk to Keith Morrison after his interview with Vallow. What did you think before you went into this interview, and then more importantly, afterwards?
Afterwards, I wanted to go have a nap for a while. It was an extremely contentious interview. She is a very aggressive person when she wants to be. It was combative. She can be very sarcastic. She can be very flirtatious. She is charismatic. She's a very difficult person to interview. She had her own agenda, and she wanted to tell a story. And I knew the story wasn't true. So I was trying to get her to answer the questions I had for her. And that was not easy. So it was a fascinating conversation. And we had a limited amount of time for it. So it at times was one that you tried to hurry along, but she had her own speed.
Okay, Hector, you just heard him describe her flirtatious. combative, charismatic. I mean, talk about a wide range of, characters in a way. What do you make of all that?
I mean, she's trying to take a playbook, from the Jodi Arias, case, I guess. This is really odd. And again, she has the right to do this. I'm sure that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, if they weren't sitting somewhere off to the side, they're going to ask for, a transcript or subpoena a transcript of, the unedited copy if they can get their hands on it. I'd like to listen to it. And it may come back up to impeach her later.
I'll add, too, that seeing her in these first few hearings representing herself, that same demeanor is really evident in the courtroom as well. You can hear she, sounds like she knows what she's talking about when it comes to law. She's really, really confident. And oftentimes she comes into the courtroom smiling, giggling. So it's demeanor we've seen before, but I'm really curious to see the full interview here, what Dateline puts together, because I think it'll be really telling, especially as we head into her trial, which jury selection is set to start later this month.
Wouldn't something like this hurt her, though?
Potentially, yes, potentially. I mean, they're going to look at it to the extent that she testifies, and what she testifies to is inconsistent to something that came out during the interview, and yeah, it could come back to really hurt her. And there's this thing called jury nullification, right? This idea that you can get your story out, and maybe the eventual jury hears about it, and they don't really care about the charges. They somehow you've endeared yourself to the jury. Yeah. I don't think that's. Listen, must see TV. I want to watch it tomorrow, but I'm not sure that she accomplished that by her interview.
Yeah. All right. Hector, Erica, thank you so very much. And speaking of which, truly a fascinating interview between Keith Morrison and Lori Vallow. Again, you can watch that tomorrow night on Dateline's all-new 2-hour episode, Lori Vallow Daybell, the jailhouse interview. Again, it's tomorrow night at 8 o'clock right here on 12 News. Troy?
Yeah, big difference between her and Jodi, though. Jodi didn't kill her own 2 little kids, right? And cut them